Well, thank you very much for meeting with me and time to San Diego. And
Pleasure.
Anybody still call you the Shermanator?
Oh yeah, I've had that name well before I even got into politics. That was kind of a name that was given to me back with my fishing buddies.
Right.
Yeah. And it kind of went from there and it carried into government.
That's great. The Lincoln Club and the County Republican Party have endorsed you, and their endorsements can also mean financial help. How important are these endorsements to you, these Republican Lincoln Club style endorsements?
Well, the party one is kind of part of, like you were talking about, the financing aspect of things and how to help run a campaign and get the word out to people from your own party, even though this is a nonpartisan race. I mean,
Right.
It's part of what you need. The Lincoln Club, I appeared before them and talked about why I was running, and they decided to endorse me. I actually didn't ask them for it, but they're doing it, which is fine, and I welcome it.
Good. Have you ever considered following Mark Kersey and Summer Stephan out of the GOP door?
No, not really. I'd rather try and change when it comes to party politics, which isn't part of mayor, but when it comes, I'd rather want to change the narrative from within instead of abandoning. I think there's some things that can be changed, but my core fiscal conservatism, that doesn't change. I mean, that's just who I am. I'm a business owner for 27 years, so it's kind of the way it is.
Okay. Can you tell me about Fifth Avenue Insurance? Are you still involved in that? Or are you still?
No.
Okay, but you're still invested in it?
Actually, we sold it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, 3.5 years ago.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
okay.
Over to a company named Snap Insurance. They were longtime friends, friendly competitors in the industry.
Okay.
And when my wife and I decided to, and my business partner, we decided to sell it, that's who we sold to.
Oh.
So it's worked out really well.
Okay, but and you don't have any financial interest in it, right?
I have my own personal book of business, my clients that I had way before.
Oh, I see.
Which I still get income, as a commission.
Oh, I see. The maritime business mainly?
Yeah, and apartments and those types of things.
Okay.
Houses, cars, businesses, that's all that kind of thing that I've insured for 20 plus years.
Okay, good. Again, congratulations on the latest poll, UT KTTV. If you join Todd Gloria in the November runoff, which is kind of conventional wisdom, you'd need Democratic votes to win. Why should Democrats vote for you?
Well, again, it's a nonpartisan thing. I don't think common sense has a party affiliation to it. And if you want to look at it that way, I've had a history of working across the aisle, and when I think we could work together and make something happen, especially in the area of housing. I mean, David Alvarez and I were written up in the New York Times as the city's odd couple because we were working together on housing issues despite all the turmoil going on in the country.
Right.
And we'll have agreements and disagreements, but I always do what I think is right and let the chips fall where they may at the end of the day.
Okay. Are you sensitive to the critique of the police department and MTS policing by Tasha Williamson, who's the minor candidate but still shows up at debates? Do you have any sensitivity to the black concerns about racial bias in the police department?
Yeah, there are some. I think neighborhood policing is really the way to go, where you get beat cops walking in the neighborhood who live in the neighborhood and people can develop a trust. We're always for looking at studies and seeing what can be improved upon on the police department. The issues I have a lot of times is people have a tendency to cast a very broad brush talking about problems in the police department when the problems that we have seen, with that many officers, it's usually one or two and then we move on discipline on them really quick. I don't want to be casting a broad net. Right. And I think we've dealt with the instances that have occurred pretty quickly and pretty, in a timely manner anyway.
So you support Dave Nislight as police chief and would like to see him stay on?
Yeah, so far so good. So far so good.
Okay. You once had it said you had a chalkboard countdown about looking forward to the end of your term, D7.
Yeah, it's still there.
And as far as the end of your term, and possible return to kayak fishing. You've told several people that you've been asked to run for mayor. Who asked you to run?
All kinds of people. And there's the usual suspects, the people from the party or the people who stand to make money off of me, consultants and pollsters and fundraisers and all those people.
Yeah.
But for the last few months, every time my wife and I went out in public, literally, we had 2 or 3 people come up and ask me to run. So I figured, you know what? My wife and I, we went to the desert on Thanksgiving and did some camping and riding the dune buggy, those type of things, and had a long conversation about it. And we both decided, I think we kind of have to do this, or the things that I find important aren't going to be discussed in the conversation, and it should be discussed. And I think if people concentrate on what I've done and what I'm looking forward to, I think there's a very good opportunity to pull this thing off.
What was Tony Kavarek's pitch to you to run?
From the party side, and I knew they wanted me to run. That's part of the deal. Especially since there was nobody really jumping in the race. And I told them straight out early on that that's not influencing my decision on what I'm going to do, because I was still telling them no right up until about Thanksgiving. I was still telling them, we're not. I still was telling them no, but the pressure from general people around town. My wife and I went down on the boat one time, and we were gassing up the boat to go out on the bay for a night, and the sardine boat was there filling up with gas too. The captain leaves the helm and comes walking down onto the dock and asked me if I was going to run for mayor, and encouraged me to do so. And then there was a guy who was from the harbor police who was on the other side of the dock. He came up and started talking to us about it.
Everybody knows you down at the dock.
Or the Home Depot or Costco.
Where are you docked?
Down at Southwestern in Point Loma there.
What kind of boat?
It's a 25-foot Parker sport fishing boat.
In 2012, one of your campaign planks involved open and transparent government. Are you satisfied with the city's fulfillment of its Public Records Act requirements, which have been criticized in a recent audit?
Yeah, we've had some issues, and a lot of there's been a giant increase in the volume, and we're having issues trying to keep up with those records requests. But we need to do better on what we're doing to get it out there. It's just the way it is. The public has the right to know everything. It's one of the reasons I have been pushing and have my charter amendment coming up on how we elect a city auditor. It's all about It's all about independence and transparency.
Right.
No matter who's holding the office, this is about making sure there's some independent body overlooking government.
Right. As the UT recently reported, does the city hall need 50 PR people?
We need PR people, don't get me wrong. It's an important function. Every council office has a communications person that deals with the media, those types of things. 50 is a large number, and we've hired on a few in the last few years, especially this last one that the council put in place. Which
Dave Rowland.
Dave Rowland is a good journalist, everything else, but the position that's going to represent all 9 council members as a council body, I don't understand, one, how that's going to work or what's the necessity for it. We all have our own communications people. The media knows how to get a hold of us whenever they need.
Did you have any objections or put up any objections when it was proposed in her budget, Georgette's budget?
No, when it was voted at council, though, I voted against it.
Oh, you voted for the entire budget, for the council budget?
No, I didn't vote for the budget either.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't vote for the budget, and then that special item for that, the communication.
Your conscience is clear, basically. Yeah. Okay. You once said that you would not take a city pension or accept any city retirement benefits if elected to the city council. Would that still apply to being mayor?
I'm in the city's 401k, just like a regular business. So.
Okay.
And which is fine. It's just like any other private sector opportunity, but a pension I would not be involved in.
Okay. This leads to the question of Prop B, which was something you supported early on, Carl.
Right.
Now that it's been batted out by the court, we still have to fix the pension issue. We still have to.
Yeah, that's going back to, I think it's PERB that's coming up with a remedy supposedly on that, with negotiations with the unions in the city and those type of things.
Would you like to see some of Prop B?
That may be the actual fix to live up to what the intention of the voters was.
Yeah.
And that may be that we just need to have that kind of fix, because the the bulk of property hasn't really been decided as a bad, it wasn't said that property itself was a problem. It was the fact that Jerry Sanders
Didn't meet and confer with
didn't
you.
meet and confer. They never ruled on the merits of property.
Correct.
It may be that it just needs to go back to the voters with some clarity and in a more defensible position in court.
So what initiative would you take to fix the pension issue?
I'm going to have to find out what stage of the negotiations it's in if I take mayor. And then from there, it may be having to go back to the public to fix it. If there can't be a common sense solution
Within the negotiating process.
Within the negotiation process.
I see. Tell me about your kids and what they do for a living out of state.
My daughter is a single mom, 2 kids. Was up until just recently working for a charter school over there in Arizona, doing teaching aid and those types of things.
Okay. Is it not full-time?
Not full-time, so she's off and on with that.
Yeah.
And then my stepson, Daniel, he's in Dayton, Nevada, and he was working with Tesla, and now he's got a job opportunity at this other place, but I don't know where that is right now.
Kevin Faulkner has been a no-show at some of the Air Force One landings at Miramar. If President Trump flies into Miramar, will you meet him?
Have to make that decision at the time.
Why?
I would probably do it because it's protocols to meet with the President of the United States, no matter what the politics of it are.
Well, you're aware that because of the tension over the border and other issues, the mayor has been a little standoffish from the president. He doesn't want to, even though he's gone to meet him and talk to him about things.
Yeah, and I'm sure he caught a lot of flack for it.
Yeah, and famously, Ray Ellis dropped out of the D1 race in 2016 against Barbara Breed because he thought that there would be some kind of blue wave revulsion against Trump and would affect his council race. Didn't affect you. There's a question about what kind of Republicans are. There's the thought that there's a conservative, moderate, traditional Republicans, the fiscal conservatives of your stripe, and then there are those who think that the party of Trump has taken over the Republican Party and basically perverted it from its original, missions and values. So I'm trying to figure out what kind of Republican you are. One question I could ask is, do you think Trump was guilty of any impeachable offenses by the shakedown of Ukraine's president?
Yeah, see, those are the type of things that I think don't need to be involved in city politics.
Okay, but yes.
I'm a fiscal conservative,
right,
and a social moderate.
Correct. Point no more Republican things to say.
Yeah, maybe. I look at myself more of in the Ronald Reagan type model of a Republican, if that, less government, more bang for the buck from the money you do send to government. But at the same time, he did a lot of work with Mexico and trying to solve the border issue and those types of things. I've got a long history of spending time in Mexico. My wife's Hispanic. Her father.
Oh, really?
Yeah, her father migrated here from Sonora back in the day.
Oh, really?
So, and I used to spend my summers a lot of time when I was very young with my grandfather outside Rosarito. So I understand a lot of those issues. We have laws on the books, and the city's job is basically to enforce the law. That's it. Whatever we're told we have to do, that's it. No more, no less.
Yeah.
I don't need cops enforcing immigration laws.
Yeah. Well, that's a different issue,
But when it comes to the federal issues, if I wanted to weigh in on those things, I would have run for federal office. I got into politics because they said it was nonpartisan.
Right. There is an issue that affects us distinctly and directly is the border and the supposed need for a concrete or very beautiful border wall across the southern border. And at one point, Trump closed the border and caused millions of dollars of economic harm to the region.
Yeah, I thought that was a mistake.
You thought that was a mistake.
From the city's perspective,
sure.
It's like, hey, look, you're costing us money by doing this. So
sure.
That's a big problem. So we've got the Tijuana River deal where we need more federal involvement, so
Right.
it's a fine line you have to walk there.
Yeah, you can't defend him, but you got to push for it.
Well, you know how he
Yeah.
reacts to things. So.
Yeah. What do you think of, first of all, do you or do you not support a 2,000-mile border wall with Mexico?
In San Diego area, we already have a barrier. That's just
Yeah,
the way
we have
it
a
is.
barrier.
Yeah,
It's not a wall, but it's a barrier. It does the job.
the same thing.
Yeah.
I'd much rather see we discuss more productive things, that we can work
Good.
together as a mega region and cooperate economically across the border.
Good.
I mean, the only time I have ever gone on one of those politically sponsored trips somewhere was to Mexico City. And that's because I was meeting with their heads of government about a visa issue that fishermen were now required to get visas to go across the water to fish like the Coronado Islands here.
Yeah.
And that was a big impact to our sports fishing fleet, which is a big economic driver for tourism and makes a lot of money for the city. So
Yeah.
I went and met with them trying to solve that problem, and eventually we did.
So what's the resolution?
Yeah, we got an online visa that you can do now instead of having to go in someplace and pick up your visa, go across the water. You can do it online, you pay your fee, fill out a few bit of forms, you can print it out and have that document with you on the boat. So if you get pulled over by the Mexican Navy, then you have the document. Which I've actually had the Mexican Navy stop me twice out at the Coronado Islands fishing.
Is that it within their
Yep.
territorial water?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's a biosphere that they have set up around that island.
Okay.
So you have to have a bracelet, you have to have the Mexican visa, and you have to have your Mexican fishing license, and a temporary importer's permit for your boat.
Interesting.
But once you have that, they pull you over, to check your documentation.
Yeah.
You give them the documentation, and you're back to fishing and enjoying what we've always done.
Huh.
Just got to make sure that we're paying the respect to Mexico
Right.
for fishing their waters.
I see. You didn't vote in the original climate action plan vote because of some kind of recovery from a medical procedure. Do you recall what that was?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Total knee replacement.
Total knee replacement.
Yeah.
Wow. Which one?
I was 48 hours out of having a new titanium knee put on my right leg.
Oh my goodness.
It was so many years. I mean, I had 4 surgeries on it before that one. Broke it playing football, and then 20 years of martial arts did its damage. So
Yeah. So how's your knee feel now?
wonderful.
Good.
Best thing I ever did. I went from literally not being able to sit for more than 20 minutes without being in terrible pain. I couldn't walk to the end of the block because of pain. 6 months after surgery, I was playing over the line.
Ah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and that can be tough on the knees because all the twisting and stuff.
Yeah, in the sand and all that.
Yeah.
It did wonderful, and it's
Good
still doing a really good
Okay.
job.
Okay.
So yeah, I missed that one. My chief Barrett still tried to get me to come to council to cast my vote. He wanted me to come in a wheelchair and all that stuff. I said, no, I think they'll understand.
Okay. How would you have voted that day?
I would have voted for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And more recently on the Environment Committee, you were the one dissenting vote for declaring a climate crisis, a climate emergency rather, for the sake of eventually getting, I guess, state money or something. Can you define the procedural reasons you voted against it?
It's a resolution,
Yeah.
and I don't vote for resolutions because there's no teeth to a resolution.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. You know what happens to a resolution? It goes to some bureaucrat's desk somewhere, and then it gets put in the circular file.
Yeah.
And I've told people many times that I don't vote resolutions one way or the other, whether I'm for them or against them, just because of that fact. Give me something that has something with teeth to it, and we can get it done.
Okay. Tell me your commitment to combating climate change, because I'm starting from the assumption that the debate is over. Human-caused climate change is the reason for the extreme weather, et cetera, and UN and all the government agencies are saying.
And we have a climate action plan that we have to adhere to.
Right.
Yeah,
Is it tough enough?
Yeah, I would have expressed some reservations on the actual goal numbers that we were setting, wondering if they're realistic. I mean, you look at the bike lane and some of the mode shift numbers that they were looking at, they are pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
And then there's no room for flexibility too, because you look at China's national sword policy where they're not taking a whole bunch of our recyclables.
Right.
That's really going to cut into whether or not we can make our goals when it comes to recycling. But overall, the idea is good. there's some implementation things that could be done better, so.
Okay, just for the record, is climate change human-driven, the current what we're observing?
Yeah, in part, absolutely.
Okay. So
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of natural cycles and man's intrusion on it.
Okay, but what do you think of the arguments that we have basically a 10-year window to severely cut the CO2 emissions to prevent from major catastrophes?
That would have been another one of my issues about, are these goals realistic? I don't know if the 10 years prediction is absolutely set in stone, because I remember many predictions during my 56 years on this planet that it was going to end in X amount of time, and we haven't seen it. Now what we've done, has it helped move that date down the road? That's the big question. Yeah. But we do need to prepare for it, because if it's coming, then we need to make sure that we prepare for it.
Yeah, because students went out on a school strike and or the school walkout to protest it. What do you tell kids who are concerned about what every governmental agency and body is doing, that you would be, as mayor, doing the most you could to move the needle on climate change efforts in San Diego?
Well, I think that's what the Climate Action Plan is for. I mean, you just adhere to that and explain to kids, look, we are taking steps to do it. Okay. We understand that you're coming in and wanting to help. Here's what we're doing, and here's what you can do to help to achieve those goals along the way. And we were at one of the schools the other day, and they were talking about doing recycling competitions with the kid, those types of things to get that awareness and make sure that the elected officials represent that awareness. Okay.
Where do you get your news and information? What newspapers do you read? This is the Sarah Palin question.
Actual newspapers, I only read the hard copy UT, as that's where I get it, but a lot of times it's from internet and those types of outlets. Usually my staff shows me, here's of interest. I usually go and look at Wall Street Journal when I can, because I'm not a subscriber. Okay. Any
websites you're regularly watching?
No, mostly the UT. And
what about TV?
A couple local channels, and that's about it. Okay.
So you're not a Fox devotee or
no.
Fox News rather.
I literally, my morning starts at about 4:30.
Oh boy.
I watch KUSI and a couple of the local news channels to see what's going on locally, and I purposefully stay away from the federal stuff in this job right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you treated fairly by the UT?
I think so.
Are you treated fairly by Voice of San Diego?
Yeah. I think most of the media treats me pretty fairly, because I answer the questions and I'm pretty open and honest with them. So I think it's been a pretty good relationship for the last 7 years.
3 years ago, several people complained to the FPPC and the City Ethics Commission about concerns that your father's ownership of some apartment rentals, especially in Ocean Beach, might compromise you if you were to vote on short-term vacation rentals. What's the status of that? I know that they basically found that there was no evidence that you were compromised or had a conflict of interest.
Right.
But what is the status of your dad's ownership of apartments in the city and your investment in that, or your?
I have no investment in any of them.
Okay.
So the assumption that the people were making was, my dad has a couple of apartment buildings around, and so a lot of the ones they mentioned he doesn't even own. I mean, he may have a small interest in that type of thing, but he doesn't actually own them. They would have to assume that, one, upon his passing, if he precedes me, that he would have to give all those to me, which my dad always says, I'm spending it as fast as I can. Two, that we would that I would go and put in short-term vacation rentals in a piece of property that I might someday own. I mean, if I was going to use that same type of logic, any council member on there who owns their own home would have to recuse themselves, because someday they may get a different house and open that one up to a short-term vacation rental. Right. I mean, it's an absurd logic. It was people reaching, I think, on that one, trying to find some reason to get me off of it.
Well, there were. I talked to one of the original leaders of the anti-Airbnb movement, And they were very concerned, in fact, objected loudly to your first proposal, which, according to this person, would allow investors to buy up to 3 residential properties each and convert them to vacation rentals. Controls would have allowed wealthy out-of-town investors to buy a limited number of housing units. Are you sorry about that plan, which really bothered a lot of people?
No. I mean, property rights are property rights. It's, how can government come in and tell me how many houses I can own or how many pieces of property?
Yeah.
I know this one person that I talk to at the cigar shop every once in a while. He owns 3 little vacation rentals he's owned forever. That is his income. He and his wife are retired, and they have no other income other than those vacation rentals that they've had for decades. From there, though, we came to a compromise that was your own home and one other. That came to council with 4 of us co-sponsoring that measure that would have had code enforcement officers being paid for by fines. We would have dealt with the quality of life problems that everybody's complaining about, because there was really what the issues were.
Yeah.
We had all that in place. We had a 4-person compromise coming to council, and then one council member voted against their own the measure they co-sponsored, and it went down 4 to 5.
But as a result of the threat of a ballot measure by Airbnb and other people, basically the short-term vacation rental issue is still in stalemate, unresolved.
It's still wild west. That's why we needed some regulation.
Okay, so when I talked to Barbara Bree, she quoted a figure of 16,000 potential Airbnb units that are not available for people to live in as potential affordable housing. Do you buy that number, that there are as many as 16,000?
Well, you need to break that number down too. A lot of these houses are second homes. So if they're not renting them out as short-term, they can't rent them out because they come back and forth to those homes. Yeah. So they wouldn't be available on the market anyway.
Well, except for renters who could rent them.
Yeah, but if I have a second home,
you might want to occupy it.
I might occupy 2 or 3 months out of the year, and you can't be kicking people in and out. Yeah, secondly, a lot of those homes that she's talking about that are all vacation rentals that she said could help with our housing crisis.
Right.
They're all in very, very expensive areas. They're not going to deal with our real problem, which is middle market housing and affordable housing. This is luxury housing.
Or in Ocean Beach coastal communities.
Yeah, it's all stuff on the coast that is very expensive. It's not going to deal with our housing crisis and our missing middle.
Yeah. Wendy Meecroft, who is a Democrat running for your seat, has some almost conservative proposals for how to increase affordable housing in her community plan that I read. Let me ask you about some of her ideas. Would you support any of these? A vacancy tax on empty units.
A vacancy tax on empty units.
In other words,
hadn't even given it consideration. Hadn't even thought about it. I'd like to see incentives to get vacant units opened up to where we can build more units and put new building and more development in areas like we did in Granville.
Okay. Reform vacation rental laws, which you still want to do.
Oh, yeah, I want regulations on the book that make sense. I'd like to see us get back to what I thought was a good compromise that we all had, which was the 1-in-1 ownership with an exclusion for Mission Beach, because if we change that, then we had a constitutional issue to deal with, in my opinion. But I thought that compromise was a good compromise from both sides. It had good support, just the unions got involved with that one.
What about, you don't want to go, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. What will move the ball on this issue? On the
I think eventually, if we can't come up with a solution, because we've been trying to come up with it forever, you're going to need some type of some type of initiative put on the ballot.
Well, what about the idea that Mara Elliott can simply say, "Hey, this is all illegal, breaks zoning laws"?
That's one legal opinion.
Yeah.
We've had other legal opinions that know they're perfectly permissible.
Yeah.
This is the first one that we've heard somebody come up saying, no, it's not allowed. At least as far as the 12, 14, whatever years it was we look back.
Yeah. Okay, another one of Wendy Wheatcroft's ideas is legalized townhomes in every neighborhood, which, in other words, fixed, what do you call it, connected housing?
Condos and
Yeah.
townhomes and those
Yeah.
types of things. I think we're pretty close to being able to do that already, and with the transit-oriented development regulations that have been put in place, that encompasses most of the city. Really, I think the best thing you can do is different zoning laws. Just look at what we did in Grantville. If you look at what we did there, we did the Grantville specific plan, which we upzoned some of that area to let
Yeah.
more development because it's around a trolley station and that.
Right.
And we gave the low-income density bonus. We've got 2,000 units coming in brand new in the pipeline and having already been built, with 30% of that being affordable, just by some incentives and some rezone.
But, Grantville is one thing, La Jolla is another, North County, North City, Carmel Valley, and all those. Do you support inclusionary housing and even potential townhomes in La Jolla,
Sure, in certain parts it makes sense if it's around mass transit. Everybody's got to do their part. It's a citywide problem. I mean, it's a citywide crisis. It's
Right.
a citywide issue. We've embraced it in District 7 during my time there, where we've seen District 1, District 5, just no supportive housing, no permits pulled, nothing in the pipeline, nothing developed. And it's a citywide problem. It takes a little bit of work from everybody in the city to deal with it.
Okay. Another idea from Wendy Wheatcroft is basically getting rid of or drastically reducing development impact fees, which help build parks and schools.
We've already taken steps in some of those areas, and we're right now moving to get development impact fees by the square foot instead of by the unit. Because right now, by the unit, it's a very large cost, and then that gets passed on in the form of one big giant unit that they can charge luxury prices for and pay for the deal. If you do it by square foot,
You can't dodge it.
yeah, and I can split it up. It's a win-win.
Oh, yeah.
So instead of building this giant unit over here to make all my money back because it's per the unit, it's by the square foot. I'll build 2 units that are smaller. Instead of one $800,000 unit, I can now do 2 at, say, $410,000, make some extra money, and also provide that middle gap that we're missing.
What's the status of that idea? I mean,
I think it went through committee. I don't know if it's been to full council yet. I can find out.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I've been pushing for that for a few years. It was part of David Alvarez's 20-point plan on housing.
Oh, okay. I assume you're backing Noli Zosa for D7, or have you said anything official?
I told Noli he has my endorsement
Okay.
a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if he's published it or done anything with it.
Okay.
It took a little while. Noli and I talked about things, and I think he's new to politics, and I think he's understanding where to go.
Okay. Why is it not a slam dunk issue?
Oh, we had one little tiny issue that we've resolved, but I mean, he's a small business owner. He understands employment and where the money comes from and the margins you have to operate on and those types of things.
What was your
Our disagreement
Yeah.
our disagreement over the skate world issue way back in the day.
You built a skate park and
No, Skate World, which was the last roller skating rink.
okay.
Right.
Okay, he didn't want it, you did?
He wanted to keep Skate World there.
Oh.
It's a long story, and I like it if you want. There was city redevelopment land that Skate World sits on, that by state mandate we have to sell off. So we put it out to bid to 3 different rounds to anybody who wanted to bid on that piece of property. Civic did, because they were in charge of redevelopment. It went through 3 rounds, and Skate World, which is a beloved institution, came in second in every round. Then they came down to council and said, hey, look, we're Skate World. We've been there forever. Just tell us what we have to beat, and we'll do it. And I went, well, wait a minute. If it was reversed, and you guys had won every round, and second place came in and said, no, reopen the bidding, you'd be saying, no, we won this fair and square. I've got to look at it that way. I can't use my enjoyment of skating and liking Skate World and appreciating what it has done to violate that process. So that was my position on it. And it got emotional with the community, but I had to stick true to what I thought was right.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Well, I appreciate your consistency there. Do you share Barbara Bree's concerns about Todd Gloria having 2 campaign committees and the potential for flooding the local Democratic Party with some of his assembly committee money that it could be used to boost his fortunes?
Yeah, it's concerning. I mean, one or the other. Take your pick. You're running for mayor, you're running for assembly.
Well, he's obviously running for mayor and not for assembly, but he's taking advantage
But he's still,
of loopholes.
if he's still got that money out there, putting his name out there, it's still gonna help him in the long run.
Yeah.
Run for one office, that's it.
How's your fundraising going?
Better than expected. The first 3.5 weeks since I announced, which was over the holiday season, we did $101,000, and 59.2% of those donors were first-time donors to the political process in the city. So very encouraging that grassroots common sense and 7 years of being pretty open and transparent with people, maybe it's paying off.
Is the deadline? The deadline to report
It was on the 31st.
Yes.
Right, and that was our 101.
Okay, so this won't be news when it comes out.
No, it's already out there.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But it was better than we expected over holiday season, and the amount of new donors, and they were all smaller donors, which shows me that there's a group outside of the traditional political beltway that I think is getting excited about having that choice.
Good. I asked Barbara what her mayoral style would be, because Filner had his brash driving around an SUV, black SUVs style. What would your style be as far as public perceptions of you? What kind of a mayor would you be? Would you be like Ed Kopp saying, how am I doing? How am I doing? what would you do?
The same style I do now. I'm pretty open, I'm pretty transparent, I meet with anybody. I drive around in my pickup truck, it's one of the jokes I've had with the mayor's security detail when they knew I was running, is I'm all, well, I don't want to have to drive around in your guys' car with you and be escorted all over the city. And then, well, it's policy. Well, we'll talk about that when the time comes.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, but it is. They have their job to do, which is protect the mayor of the 8th largest city in the country. So
right.
It's not a good perception. As it is now, I drive around in my pickup truck and I go. It's kind of interesting in the style to just going to community events now that this mayoral discussion is taken off. When we have these forums, it's like, Todd will come in with 2 or 3 or 4 staffers in tow, and Barbara will come in with a couple staffers in tow, and I'm over here talking what I normally do.
Yeah, but you do have Jason Rowe, who is a big-time major strategist. And, did he approach you, or did you approach him? How did you?
Jason and I have been friends ever since my last 2 campaigns. He did my last 2 campaigns too, so we've been friends ever since. We ended up going fishing and doing those kind of things, going to the desert together sometimes.
How would you negotiate with the Supermajority Democratic Council if it continues to be there?
Well, do like I've done so far in the housing realm, working with people on all sides of the aisle. David Alvarez and I did a bunch together. We've done things with Georgette when it came to ADUs and those kind of things. Find areas we can work together on, define those, work together on those. And then if we want to have disagreements in certain other areas, you've got your side of the aisle, I've got the mayor's side, and the bully pulpit that comes with that. Yeah. And we use that to have a public debate and let the voters decide which they think is the best important way to go.
In the mayor's annual State of the City address, it's very polished, highly produced videos that introduce him, and he comes in like Steve Jobs and supposedly wows everybody. Do you think these promotional videos are of value? Do you think you need to puff yourself up to make a point or to achieve your goals?
I'm not a big production kind of guy. I mean, to this day, I still don't have a speech that was written down on paper anywhere. I just kind of speak from the heart. I think it's a good way to set out your goals and your platforms and to broadcast what's important to you going forward. So I think that's important for the state of city. And then to let people know what we've achieved.
Your candidacy, although is welcomed by many, basically scrambled Barbara Bree's strategy completely, because she was appealing to what she called a wide political spectrum. Now a wide political spectrum has been narrowed. So now that the poll kind of confirms the idea that she will not make the top two. Did you have any conversations with Barbara about your possibly getting in, and did she have any understanding? Did you?
We met a couple of times on it. She wanted. I don't think she wanted me to without to run without outright saying it. I let her know as my resolve to not run was starting to wane. I let her know it was starting to fall back, and there's a chance.
Now she jumped into the race more than a year ago, probably on the assumption that maybe you weren't. So do you feel bad about basically giving her a consent to run without, and then forcing her to spend all this money and make all this efforts, and then it's took for naught?
Yeah, maybe a little, because it took me so long to get to the point where I decided to run. But it was one of those things I just had to respond to what the public was doing and had to make that decision, and it is what it is.
Were you hoping that Chris Cate or somebody would have run?
I didn't really give it much thought. It wasn't until those last few months where everybody, just people on the street were asking so much that it really drove that decision home.
Hey, one of Barbara's main selling points is she's going to crack down on e-scooters, and she's going to defend the rights of the people, the old people walking on sidewalks. How would you resolve the e-scooter crisis in her mind?
Well, I think we already kind of had with the regulations we put in place.
Yeah.
We were seeing the streets weren't having them cluttered all over the place. We were seeing them in corrals. The amount of violations and trips and everything were already starting to go down. But that was 6 months ago. And then all of a sudden we're talking about banning and cracking down and doing all these things. Like, give the regulations a chance to work before suddenly you start crying foul.
Do you think
and it's an innovative economy. It's part of our mode shift goals for the climate action plan. It just is. My staff uses them, when they're going for quick trips to and from little places down here in downtown. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Find some kind of common sense solution in there. I was even talking to a company the other day trying to find common sense solutions.
Because when his lime's already pulled out as a result of
right, exactly.
Boardwalk.
So that worries me that sector of the innovative economy that we've been trying to push for now may be regulated out of being able to help.
Are you getting any donations from e-scooter companies?
I'd have to go and look and see who's donated. They're all been pretty small. We've had a couple of fundraisers. Most of those were people in the housing industry. So
okay.
There could be individuals from that industry somewhere. I don't know. I'd have to look.
Somebody asked me to ask you about Morris Cerullo's religious resort in Mission Valley.
But it's a lot smaller than it was originally planned.
And
I think the Caesar's Palace, the way it was originally planned.
Yes, that's what scared people.
Yeah.
But now it's pretty much opened, and it's the western wall is there. Everybody can see that. Have you visited it? Have you had any contact with the developers or anything?
No.
Okay.
I've seen it from the road. That's about it.
Okay.
Watching the development, construction, and completion.
And also in Mission Valley is the SDSU West or the Mission Valley plan.
Yeah.
Are you satisfied the city's getting its money's worth with their increased deal, $80-something million?
Yeah. By initiative, the way the initiative was written, I said after it was passed and they were talking about price, and it's worth, the media was saying it could be worth, 150, 110, 200. And well, if I read the initiative, we're pretty much stuck at about 87. And that's what they came up to, what the actual initiative said, without any deductions that they were trying to put in originally. So I think we're really close on that deal. Still looking at some traffic mitigation areas. Their final environmental impact report came out Friday, and that's really where our teeth are if we're going to have any enforcement over the traffic issues around their 55,000 trips that are supposed to be coming in and out of there. We want to make sure that the infrastructure is in place and that they're committed to doing their fair share. And once we sell it, that's kind of off the board unless we have it in the EIR.
You were, at one point, I think you were in favor of the city building a stadium for the Chargers.
Well, at the last minute, we put out that deal that I was never in the position for a city building it.
Right.
At the very last hour, when we were trying to
Save them from leaving.
save them from leaving,
Yeah.
we had 4 council members, I was one of them, that put together and said, hey, we will lease you that land down there for $1 a year for 99 years. You guys develop it and knock yourselves out. They got upset saying it was a terrible deal, blah, 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 blah. Which I found interesting is because as soon as they leave, we had 2 different development issues, spending tens of millions of dollars just for the right to have control over that property.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it kind of showed that they were not serious about being here anyway.
San Diego, basically native, did you really feel bad about the Chargers leaving, or did you have any strong feelings?
I felt bad because it was the end of an era. I felt really bad early on, but then my dealings with that situation over a long period of time and seeing how things were working behind the scenes, I didn't have any love for them anymore. But I tell you, I grew up with the Chargers. I still miss being a Charger fan, and I was always a Charger fan because it had San Diego in front of it, you know? Yeah.
If you don't win in November, what are your plans?
Probably going back to selling insurance and seeing what the next page is. Probably would not be here in politics. We'll be back in the private sector.
What is Norma's plans for you?
It took her a little while once we got to a point with everybody asking her, she was the one who kind of said, you really should do this. So.
Okay, but not that she has plans, I'm talking about what would be
if we don't make it, and then we're
Yeah.
doing what she's doing now, selling insurance here and there, taking care.
Oh, she's selling insurance?
Yeah, that's how we met, was in the insurance world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a long time ago. And you have to remember too, her 93-year-old mother lives with us. A lot of time is spent for her taking care of Mom. So that'll probably be situation normal for a little while yet to come.
Hey, give me another pitch why San Diegans should elect you for mayor, as far as being forward-looking. I mean, give me some ambitious vision. What's your vision statement? What do you see for San Diego that you really want to move the needle on?
Our housing crisis we need to deal with, and it's got to be middle-income housing. We're doing a lot on affordable and taxpayer subsidized housing. 47% of the cost of cost of building is government regulation and red tape. That makes developers build luxury units, and we have no place in the middle for people to go. We have low-income density bonuses that have worked for affordable housing. Let's do middle-income density bonuses. Let's take away a bunch of the regulations that are in place. If you look at what we did with accessory dwelling units, we just put in $800,000 to waive fees for people to actually build these things, because it was taking more to permit them than it was to build them.
Right, the granny flats have new plans you can just pick off the shelf.
Yep, and all those things are things that I brought forward, waiving the fees, reducing the regulations. We have a handbook that shows how to walk through the process that we paid for out of my office. But by the budget putting in $800,000 to make up for the waiving of those fees, we went from 0 applications in 2017 to 422 in 2019. Just by removing some regulations and some fees. We've seen the increase in Grantville that we've got down there just by reducing the time element that it takes to get through the city. The people who work for, I think it was Blue Water, affordable housing developer, we were talking at the ribbon cutting down there in Grantville for affordable housing project. And she said, publicly, I do these kind of developments up and down the state, and we've never got through the process quicker and more efficiently and less expensive than we did here in Granville. And that's just by making things incentives instead of mandates. There's a ton of things we can do to incentivize housing for that missing middle so people can move up the economic ladder.
And
We haven't even talked about homelessness yet. So.
yeah, that's the next thing. What do you tell people who? I assume you're kind of on board with the new Kevin Faulkner initiative to basically get people more mental health and drug abuse services to deal with those issues before they try to put them in, quote, housing first.
And to enforce the laws a little more stringently to compel people to get the help that we offer. Because right now we have spent a ton of money on the compassion side of the homelessness issue. I mean, I think it was just a few years ago we spent like $10 million. Now we're up in like 80 somewhere. So we've spent a lot of money on opening shelters and affordable housing and permanent supportive housing, but we've never really done a lot on the law enforcement side of things, which can compel people to get help. I don't know, did you watch the mayor's State of the City when he talked about Brian?
Yeah.
From Stella? I introduced Brian to the mayor.
Oh, really?
Because he's from the project down in the Zephyr project in Grantville. So I introduced him to him because Brian came up to me and said, "Hey, thank you for breaking up the tents."
Yeah.
He said, "I was in those tents every day shooting meth in my veins." And he said, "If it wasn't for you guys breaking up the tents, forcing me to go to the shelter, then I found a caseworker, found benefits he didn't know he had as a veteran, got into a sobriety program, and now he's 11 months clean and sober." The other day, we were dealing with an MTS issue right behind the Zephyr on the creek there in Alvarado because of the flooding, and we had a meeting down there, and my staff was there. And they look over, and there's a guy cleaning up trash along the edge of the river, and they were asking him about it, and it turns out it was Brian. He said he was just giving back still.
That's amazing.
So he's clean and sober now for almost a year, down there at the Zephyr project with a roof over his head, helping around the place, and well on his way to becoming a productive member again.
Well, the issue with forcing people to get services and treatment and et cetera is where are the services? Where is the treatment? Is there capacity to do that? Is there capacity?
That's the issue we're dealing with the county right now, because the county it's a jurisdictional thing, and the county has been holding on to a bunch of money in those areas. That's why I think I was very glad to hear about the mayor and Nathan Fletcher working on something to help free up some of those county dollars to provide those services. Well,
that's been a critique of the county supervisors for many years, as they hold on to this money that they could otherwise invest in that. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.